regime, and I was in a similar position because at that time I was also around 18, 19, and we were all saying Moi must go. You know, it was a very emotive thing, and many a times, Fred, we've said here that in that election it didn't matter who was running against Kanu.
Sure.
Because it didn't matter who was running against Kanu. It just mattered, all we wanted to see was Kanu to see go.
Correct.
And most of the millennials at that particular time, including myself, that's what we wanted to see. And when and that's what we wanted to see. And so when that moment when President Kibaki, the late President Kibaki, won that election, and we were seated with my dad, I remember that very day, and we were watching KTN at that time, and the cameras went right to Muthaiga's home, the gate of Moi Kibaki, if you remember, those who were watching. That shot, we were live seated, and the celebration in our house to see Moi go. I narrowly missed voting that election because I wasn't a registered voter. But you know, shortly after that, then we had the no campaign, and I was now in campus somewhere here where we rejected the bill, the draft bill at that particular time. But you see, that excitement that was there then is what we saw this week, and I'm just happy that more and more Kenyans are getting more informed about the affairs of the country. I think most countries struggle. They really struggle, especially when you have a huge chunk of their voters being an uninformed electorate. And so the more we have informed electorates within our nation, then we have a lot of people that are able to make what you call rational decisions, because then they are very informed. And just maybe for the benefit of your viewers, is that almost 30% of the Kenyans now, when you look at the statistics of this year Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, they're saying that we have 54 million Kenyans at this particular time. And so out of the 54 million Kenyans, almost 29-30% are between the age of 15 to 29. That is a very huge chunk, almost 15 million people. And then what you'd consider the Gen Z, which is then 30 to 45, because they say Gen Z is from 81, then it means anyone between 30 and 45, which is where we belong, is also another almost 30%. Those two blocks, Fred, are 2/3 of the vote of the population in the country today. You can imagine if those blocks, who are now all on social media, we have 30 million Kenyans online today, Fred. You can imagine. So you can imagine what such a platform can do.
It's a force to reckon.
Yes.
I mean, these are not people you take lightly. These are not people you ignore. How the NIS, how the police, how the intelligence missed out on the fact that this generation was going to go out. And it's a risky thing.
Fred, let me explain.
Yes.
Because they underestimated the impact of that platform. You understand? Many a times people said what you just alluded to at the beginning of the show, that we always knew that they would demonstrate online. Isn't it? And that means there's minimal threat. You know, you can tell me everything online, and I might just go to sleep. But if you're seated next to me and you tell me even half of that, I'll be worried because you are next to me. So the level of danger, while still stuck in the social media, was little. But now it is possible. I gave an example of what I saw yesterday myself on a different show there. I met a bunch of kids who were part of the demonstrators and part of the coordinators. I think they were university students. Most of them were from JKUAT and KU because they appeared to have come from Thika Road. And I took a moment, me and one of the producers there, for almost 2 hours we were observing what's happening. Because they were linked to a friend who was now in the CBD. So they were able to get a clear shot of the bird's eye view of what is happening in the CBD. And Fred, from where we were sitting, it was like a control tower. You know, we could tell who is where. From that shot. He was somewhere around Nation Center, so he could take the shot of Kenyatta Avenue and Moi Avenue, and they could tell. And you see the police, in this country, Fred, the National Police Service has only 109,000 police officers. And they're spread across the country. Nairobi alone has less than 10,000 police officers. Fred, such a crowd, which is almost 1 million, because 100 people can fit in this studio. Now you can imagine how big that population was. It is not easy to have an uncontrolled and unstructured group and manage these police with such number of police. And at one point I said, if the police do not handle these people very well, they are likely to be outnumbered by these people. Because I just saw a bunch of police officers, maybe 10 or 20, crowd. If they would have tried to defend themselves and shoot, there's only so many shots you can take at that point. And they take you out. You understand? And I think the president must now pay attention to what is being said, because there's an assumption here. A friend of mine, an old friend of mine, from our high school days, who is a big supporter of this government, was telling me that you know, the reason why President William Ruto is not concerned about what is happening now on the ground and even what those so-called Gen Zs are doing is because in Kenya, in Africa, presidents don't lose. That is what is in mind. He imagines somehow it is impossible to lose. And he's forgotten the kind of political structure that we have. And we had a president who lost election in 2022. A whole president with state machinery. Because the format of election is different. And like it was Kitambo, where you can koroga some people in Nairobi. Now, Fred, if you can't win machinery, it doesn't matter how much state machinery you have at Bomas. Anybody that will have mass support machinery can beat this president. And now with the new technology and the social media, the way it's become a formal platform, 30 million Kenyans online. My own father, who's 67 years old, is now on Facebook. He usually listens to me. He usually listens to me and says, "Well done," you know, because it's about, which is shocking. Yes. It means then the translation that wasn't there before, where you would say, "This is a Facebook politician," is no longer relevant.
Now you see, for me, the danger is, or the concern is. If the president does not take note of what is happening now, today members of parliament from the opposition said that they are going to join ranks with these young people. Now, the demonstration has started morphing. Initially they were against certain aspects of the bill. Now they are saying they don't want the bill.
Sure.
And they are actually saying Ruto must go. Remember, the Arab Spring started exactly like this.
Sure.
Yes. And don't you see a possibility if this is not handled right for this morphing into that kind of thing?
By the way, let me tell you, Fred, the government has to be very sensitive right now on how it's going to move. Because I can tell you, initially, this thing was not political. But I can tell you, right now, it is going to get to politics.
Yes.
In the sense that some of the people, you know, they had already said that if you vote for this thing, we are going to terrorize you as the member of parliament.
Yes.
And at the same, the executive. And actually, that is what they are going to do. Because what is going to happen now, they did not use a lot of money in what they were doing. But you see, it will get to a point whereby this vote is going to be a movement. And this movement is actually, and I listened to some young people yesterday, and they said, don't listen to us right now, but you will listen to us on 2027. So what is it that they are saying? Is that they want to overturn, and they want to bring anybody who was not with them, they want actually to get them home. And this is actually what is happening right now. I have seen some few politicians. Actually, you see, like Baba Wino.
Yes.
He took advantage of the whole scenario. And I can tell you, when you see Baba Wino gets his feet on something, he is someone who is unstoppable. In fact, you realized even in parliament, he was irritating. He was quite irritating.
Yes.
In the sense that he could be told, I thought you are a brilliant young man. What is it that you are doing? You cannot do such kind of a thing. He is a man who wants actually to appeal. And he can appeal to this young generation.
And that he's had a long history of appealing young people.
Yes,
that is demonstration.
Yes.
His entire structure is demonstration.
And that's why we are saying, that's why you are hearing George talk about celebration. It is their generation. As me and you, we are actually in another generation.
Yes.
But this is a generation that has a lot of excitement, and they will take anything and move by it. In fact, I can tell you, Fred, if there is any people now, just like the way George has said about Kanu, if there is any group that is going to bring down the leaders, some of the leaders that you used to know, some of them, they will go home. Actually, they will go home slowly. There is nothing much. It is actually that already I have seen, even in the social media. Do you know there are some people that they have said, come back, we want you for our president for 2027. As the former CS, Matiang'i is actually in the top of their mind. And they are saying that we need you, come back home. And I can tell you some of these statements that they are saying, look at the numbers that we are talking about. and look at the coordination. In fact, look at Nairobi. Today, I think they are in Kwale. And they have a program. Who is coordinating this program? You actually look, and they are actually coordinating it on the social media. This is something that we really need to know, that these guys are very far ahead. And we can assume that they are not knowing anything that is happening. But I saw some of them, and I can tell you, the government has to listen. And I don't know how it is going to listen to them.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing, the thing that might end up tainting, tainting this is when the politicians come in. And civil society people like Akina Boniface Mwangi, when they start coming in and they've thrown themselves in there, and they want to harness this force for their own goods. When these elements, because we know how they operate, when the politicians come in, and when these civil society guys who are looking obviously for something else, when they come in, if they manage to convince these young people, they want to paint themselves as the face.
That's the thing
of this.
But you see, Fred,
yes,
this is a political process. Legislation is a political process. The mobilization for votes to ensure that legislations pass is a political process. What these young people are challenging is a political process. What happened on the streets all of this week is a political process. So it can't be separated from politics. What only needs to happen is that then you're looking at relevance. You see, many people do not know that the former member of parliament for Kandui, Wafula Mnyinyi, I don't know if you remember him. You know, I knew him then when he was a guard.
A security guard.
A security guard at the American embassy there.
Yes,
he was a security guard, but in a posh institution, so it made him a little bit more formal. Because I schooled with his son, we were classmates with his son in the 90s back in school. So I knew him from then. How he became an MP is one of the miracles that people will never understand. He was one of those then youngsters, you know, then because he was a 30-year-old man in the 90s and a young family guy. And he was one of those people who were passionate about politics. And so during election time, they would always take a leave. Even my father used to do that. He would pile all his leave days. So that when it gets to that election year, that last 1 month,
he takes it.
He has a month and disappears for a month to go home and campaign for the late Joshua Ngati, who was our member of parliament and a relative as well. You know, he was a minister for health. So because he was a passionate politician. So he was one of those young men that used to do logistics for the late Michael Wamalwa Kijana. So in one of the meetings here in town during that election cycle of 1997, they had arranged to organize the Ford Kenya nominations in the constituencies that weekend. So they needed a young man to send. You know, there was no M-Pesa and unless you were doing banking. But you know, political mobilization sometimes is cash. So they needed somebody to immediately take some money for next week mobilizations of the nomination. And they met at this place that closed down used to be called Simas in town. Then the meeting was there because it was owned by Suleiman Murunga, who was the MP for Kimilili, and he was a key funder of Wamalwa Kijana at that particular time. So then they said, we need this function next week, so we need somebody to rush there tomorrow so that to prepare the money for the nominations for next week. So they said, this young man, tomorrow you have to rush home and deliver the funds for mobilizing the logistics. And they gave him 250,000 shillings. This is 1997.
That was a lot of money then.
1997. They gave him 250,000 so that the next morning he was supposed to get a taxi to Bungoma immediately. So the young man tomorrow came to town, dressed, collected the money, and went and actually took a bus. Initially, it was not his money. So instead of a taxi, which was expensive, he went and took a Eldoret Express at the country bus to go to Bungoma. And at that time, his mind is running. It takes you about 8 hours to get to Bungoma from Nairobi here. By the time you go to Bungoma in the evening, he had made up his mind that I might as well. Take advantage. So the same funds that he was supposed to give the party, he executed the project himself. You know, because ordinarily he would say maybe this is the money for buying the shirts, the t-shirts. So he himself went and bought the shirts, distributed himself, and filled the cars himself, and actually campaigned for that particular ticket. And he won the following week
Yes.
because of the funding. And you know that year you only needed to get the Ford Kenya ticket.
Yes.
And it was a done deal. The guy went from a guard to an MP within 90 days. Nobody had known him up until before that, other than just a local handler like Gaucho or ODM. That's what is just a handler. But then he transitioned into that. So sometimes as politicians you're looking for relevance, the timing could be correct, and then you ride with it and then you become something. So this is a political process, friend. It cannot be separated from politics because the bill is going through a political process. That's why parties are battling, friend. So for anybody to say that we don't want politicians to do this, how then do you implement it? Even the president said that, you see, people can give their opinions,
Yes.
but the institutions have to make the decisions, isn't it? And parliament is the institution that is actually supposed to make that decision, and it's a political institution. So these young men realize that what the president should be careful with is that the so-called Gen Zs, and I'm not excluding the millennials, Fred. I've told you anybody 45 and below, which is where I'm at. I'm at around 40, Fred, David.
Yes.
So I am right in the middle of that millennium. We were the climax of the millennials,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes.
So if these two groups are to come together, Fred, and have a compromise face of this campaign, because currently it doesn't have structures. Because if you ask you who was their leader,
Yeah, there is.
who do we arrest
It is unseen.
today?
It is
Yes.
unseen.
We don't know who to arrest,
Yes.
because there's no leader. But if they come to connect with one politician, and David has mentioned, say, Babu Wino, who has a long history of student mobilization. He is young equally. Babu Wino is born 90, I don't know, 89. He's just about 35 or 36 years. So he pretty much fits that particular segment of individuals. And is a Nairobi politician, easily recognizable across the country. He has what you call the name ID in politics. Because people must first know you as Fred, then say Fred that wants to be senator, and then senator of Kenya Kwanza or ODM. That kind of profile. So he's already surpasses the first.
But in terms of, if you listen to that generation, if you listen to the conversation and the kind of politician they are looking for, Babu Owino does not fit anywhere within that, because this generation, they have seen what he can do. They have seen his manner of things. So what I'm saying is this is a creature that we've never handled before. They have an ideal picture of the politician they are looking for. What they know right now is that the current crop of politicians do not fit that picture.
Sure.
So we will see probably a very strange human being emerging out of this to become like Madagascar. Madagascar had a DJ for a president. As in a strange creature just morphing out of the frustration
But Fred,
of the
you
people.
know, in Madagascar, just quickly before David joins in, that president of Madagascar was actually a mayor of that local town. He had already, it's like Jaguar, he had transitioned from being an entertainment to an event promoter. He comes from a rich family. He was an event promoter and he was an entertainer. So he had the money to do shows. And then because of being a young people, like the way I saw this week some celebrities, some musicians and DJs were actually on the streets. I saw some of my friends who are also radio hosts actually on the streets yesterday. You understand? So he was part of that movement. But because he was already famous, he had a big name by virtue of his family. I think his father had been a former senator or something like that. And so they already knew him. And then the president blundered. And then there were demonstrations of young people. And then the police went in hard on the population and they killed almost 1,000 people in a day. It changed from agitation to now outright murder case that the president now could not withstand what followed Ned. And the young man had already then, as a mayor of that particular city, which is basically being like an MCA. When you become an MCA, then you go to the city council to become the mayor. So he was basically an MCA, but had become the face of what was happening in the city at that particular time. And then that popular uprising made the president to rush out of the country. The president ran away. So the country he took off. So now there was nobody to lead the movement. So the person that was the face of the movement actually became the leader of the movement. So when they created a compromised leadership, that is to take up from the president, he became an outright face of that. And I think you're right. You're saying somebody along the way could also be able to take that. But you see, Fred, the young people now, particularly these Gen Zs that you're talking about, in the process of making their decisions, they are looking for somebody who's relevant and who looks like them, isn't it? And then somebody that
who espouses their ideas.
And who looks like them.
Because actually, and this, the character of this I took from my daughter and a couple of people.
Yeah.
You ask them, they're telling you, we don't want Ruto, we don't want Raila. We don't want these politicians. They've gotten us here. They know the character of these leaders. They're saying, we want a leader who is going to take us out of where we are. And they might just as well create a creature out of themselves.
I actually agree with you, Fred, totally. That we are yet to see, but there is going to be a very big shift.
Yes.
It is not the normal politics that we have been in. Yesterday when I was talking, and I talked to quite a number of young people, and I can tell you, first of all, they are fed up 100% with most of their politicians.
Yes.
In fact, they have their own agenda right now. And that's why we are saying it is only in the process that the politicians are going to come in, because they will always like getting where they see there is number, they will actually try to come in. But I can tell you right now, these girls, this generation, they don't have the structures as he has said, but they are able to drive their ideas and motions and every other thing in the right way. So what we are saying is, we are going to have, you remember during this 2022, it was actually a narrative, which was hustler versus dynasty.
Yes.
Right now, it will be young versus old.
Very true.
And you know, when they say, and they move with this one, young versus old, some of the people, like Bob Owino, they may be surprised. You know, he has white hair.
Yes.
Yeah. Just like many of us.
Yeah.
So already they know this man is taking advantage of us.
Yes.
Because I tell you, one of the things which I found in these people, they are not the way people are thinking about them. Do you know, they are actually working together and they don't need a lot of your financing. And some of the politicians are trying to get into this movement because they are thinking that we'll be able to fund. But I tell you one thing, there is something I saw yesterday and it amused me. Do you know these guys, they had even medics on the ground?
Yes.
And how much money did they actually pay to get those medics? It was 7,200. They only say these are the things which we need.
Yes.
And people were sending 10 bob, 5 bob, like that. And they were actually able to get the finances that they require. They didn't need a lot of money, less than 10,000.
Yes.
They were able to do their operations. So some of the people, the politicians who are saying that I think this is a place for me to be, and they are having an idea that we are going now to finance so that these people are going to accept us. You see someone like C.S. Matiang'i. He is not a young person. And he is very far from the country. And you are seeing that in their social medias, they are talking about Matiang'i, who is not even in the country. So the idea is actually not these normal politicians, politicking that we see. And there are so many politicians who are going to be surprised and shocked because these guys, they have an agenda. And once they form, their formation becomes stronger and it has structures. You may find some of the people who are trying to get here, they will not have a place in this. And that is actually where you are saying it is a very big danger. These young people right now, they are not looking at tomorrow.
Yes.
They are looking at now. We are talking about finance bill.
Yes.
And they are saying, yesterday I looked at them, some of them going to the top of the trees.
Yes.
The agenda they have, they are saying Zakayo must come down. I don't know who is this Zakayo. they know the Zakayo because Zakayo may not just be Zakayo may not be only the president. It may also be
maybe Gen Z can tell us who Zakayo is.
But they want Zakayo down.
They're saying Zakayo must come down.
And some of these Zakayos, they may be thinking it is only the president. But you see, the president is not the only person in this government. There are so many Zakayos, and they are really determined. There are several people who must come down. And I can tell you, this is a movement that really need to be guided well. Otherwise, as you say, look at this. Let me tell you a good example. And I have seen the power of the young people. Go to Burkina Faso.
Oh, yes.
That is one place whereby you realize even the structures are not being followed. The policies are not being followed. The young people are saying, this is the man that we need. And they are being told, after 6 months or something like this, we really need to do the change and all these kind of things. And I have said we are not going to accept any change.
Yes, they said we are sticking with Traore, we are sticking with him.
Correct. And that is actually now where we are saying people must realize the politics are changing. The politicians must realize that the politics for today is not the politics for yesterday. If they keep on pursuing the politics of yesterday, they are going to be fossils and they are going to be forgotten because the young people have an agenda. And I can tell you, it will become political, I know, and it is political as he is saying, but I can tell you, right now, I think they have not read the mind of Gen Z yet.
Well, I saw, one of the things, I looked at the demonstrations in Nyeri.
Yes.
And quite a huge number of people turned out. And they marched and they went and were addressed
by the governor.
By the governor.
Who is pro this movement.
Now, for me, that spoke volumes. Because the governor is the one who has been defending the deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua. He is the face of Rigathi Gachagua on the ground.
Yes.
These people demonstrated. I mean, went round, and where they ended up is right in front of Governor Kahiga, and he addressed them. For me, that's a message they were sending.
Yes, yes.
You see, they see their son has been oppressed, and the person they identify with, and you see, when all this thing is happening, the deputy president was sent to South Africa. So he's not around. But you can clearly see the influence of the politics that have been happening before, now manifesting in Nyeri.
You know, Fred, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has in fact formally expressed himself on this issue of cost of living. And he has even went to an extent of giving a very popular now a statement about vomiting on your voters. You heard him say that hawa watu mmekula mmeshiba sasa mnawatapikia. Essentially distancing himself from what is happening. He's just remaining with the one last shot, which is to reject the proposal of this government, and he moves to the other side. And I am sure that is what he's contemplating with politically, because it's a big decision. Because once he makes that decision, then he has to plan on how he's going to counter government, the same way this current president did. This current president opposed his own boss on a public platform with the BBI. He said no. So that is the only last thing remaining with what Gachagua is supposed to say. Let the bill pass on Tuesday. After it goes through the third reading, and it becomes law, Fred, that opens up a new phase of the campaign. Because then anybody who's able to read the mood and where the people are, because it's now very clear where the people are. Fred, the kind of mobilization that happened this week, even ODM couldn't do it. Because I saw thousands of people in my own hometown of Kakamega yesterday, right? And in my estimate, there are almost 100,000 people, because I can tell how 1,000 people look like. 1,000 people, Fred, if you are a one man here, 10 can stand to that corner. It means this room can have 200, 300 people. Can you imagine a whole army of individuals walking on that road? That is not less than 100,000 people. And Kakamega town is a rural town. For you to be able to mobilize such kind of people, even Masinde Muliro University itself has only about 15,000 people, and I think the schools have closed. So most of them are not in school, because most of them are not natives. They're people that come from elsewhere, and so most of them are home. And so it shows the direction that the country is going, and the direction that the young people are going. And I'm even excited now that even in Kakamega, the Gen Z are up and alive. I have said and told my people, Fred, that effectively from the 10th of August 2027, the retirement age for Kakamega County officials, I'll make it to be less than 50. And in that particular cabinet, if God is so gracious enough to give me an opportunity to lead the people of Kakamega, I can tell you I'll be the oldest. And I'll only be 41. So it means everybody else will be under 40. You understand? Because we truly want to run a government that is young, that is versatile, and the people who are committed and aware on the issues that we are supposed to address, and not all characters that are telling us that they can grossly underestimate a population that is almost 30 million people, and who are going to be 60 and 70% of the voters of this particular election, and that are able to have a rally online. 90,000 people going live, Fred, it means any presidential candidate can coordinate his 290 agents very easily. You don't now really need to spend money on transport to inform a group. They just need to assemble on a digital platform, and all of them will get the instructions on what they're supposed to do the next day. How do you beat such mobilization? It's impossible. Not unless the government decides to sabotage social media, which then has its own political implications. You understand? So it's a journey that now is irreversible. Anybody that underestimates that, including this president and members of this government, I saw my friend John Kiare, who used to be with the ODM, say that the initial footages that were coming on there a few days earlier was saying that these are edited clips from, I don't know, Burkina Faso. I don't know whether yesterday we were in Burkina Faso as well. There's something that happens when people get big money. And also, David, we want to urge Fred, when he becomes the governor of Moraga, please, don't change. Because money changes.
I will be there for him. I will advise him.
You know, one of the things that I've also realized that people have not seen the puppet that is playing the finance bill.
Exactly.
It is the IMF. The IMF has put so many conditionalities on this government. On you want money, we'll give you money. These are the conditions. The IMF does not give a hoot whether a country bans or not, because the conditionalities they're giving to African governments, they cannot give to Western countries, because they know those conditionalities will mess up a country.
Correct.
But they will insist on African countries so that we remain slaves of the West. And that's where Burkina Faso, the president has rejected. He's kicked the Americans and the French out.
He has gone to Russia.
He's gone to Russia and he's saying, we are going to take control of our own destiny.
Correct.
How do we deal with this creature called IMF?
Let me tell you, it is only because our government is not a listening government. I can tell you this issue of IMF, people complained about it long time ago. And in fact, you can remember there is a time that people say that it is not the president who is managing this country. It is IMF. And it is quite unfortunate, because some of these taxes that you are saying today, they are actually being imposed by people who are not in Kenya. And they don't understand what happens in Kenya. Let me give you a very good example before I proceed there. There is one company I used to work in. And it was owned by Kenyans. A big company, which was actually every year, it could be able to have a gross revenue for 1 billion.
Wow.
1 billion is not a small amount of money.
1 billion is a lot of money.
It is what people are complaining about the people in the State House. They are being given 1.2 billion.
Yes.
So it was actually operating at the levels of a B. Then what happens is that in the process of all doing the business, another investor who had a lot of money from Dubai came and acquired that company and bought, and he gave several billions for the company. When they came to Kenya, they actually came with their policies from Dubai, and they wanted to install the same processes in the Kenyan market. And one of the things that they were talking about, it is back to basics. And what were they saying? Is that they come with a form to the client and they ask them, who is your name? What do you do for a living? How did you acquire this money? Those are some those are the things. And you know, some of us, we actually sat with them and we told them this will not fly in this country. In fact, the time you ask a customer such a question, you are done completely. And they refused. What did they say? That we are resisting change. And some of us is actually the way we left that organization because we felt that what you are trying to do is not going to work. You've not understood this company and where it is stated. It is actually in Kenya. Kenyans don't behave the way you want to behave. Today as we speak, 5 years after that, the company is down completely. In fact, they have lost everything as we speak. It was actually 1,000 staffs. Right now, they have less than 100 staffs. And it is actually in the process of winding up the country. Why? It is because they brought some people who did not understand the Kenyan economy, the Kenyan customers, and the environment of operating businesses in Kenya. So now what is happening is the same with IMF. IMF are people who are just sitting behind a computer, a laptop, and they do some surveys, you know, and they say, why don't you increase this VAT? Why don't you increase this excise duty? Why don't you do 1, 2, 3 things? But they are not on the ground to understand. And it is quite a serious thing that the government is allowing people who are not Kenyans to come and tell them what to do. Some of these things that you are fighting is because the government doesn't want to say the truth. And you know, right now, last week, 2 weeks ago, IMF has gotten to a point whereby it is almost throwing its hand again on Kenya. Why is it throwing its hand? It is because they are telling Kenya, you keep on telling us that you are going to hit these budgets. Yet when we look at your actual achievement, you are always falling short of what you are supposed to achieve. Right now, do you know what has happened with IMF? They were supposed to give 37 billion. Whatever they were supposed to give, they have actually refused to give the 37 billion because they are not sure that what is happening in Kenya, it is working for them or not. So what we are saying, for them, they have actually seen that Kenya is not just a country that you get in and do those kind of things. Because I can tell you, 2023, we did not achieve the target by over 300 billion. I can tell you right now, in terms of this 2024, and right now, most of the things they have removed. You know what they are saying? They are saying they are going to reduce the budget by 176 billion, and by doing that, there are several things they are saying they are going to cut. You find even the universities, the funding is going to be cut. You find the interns, there was a strike just another day for the interns, the doctors and all this. They are saying that that money is not going to be available. Look at what we are saying. It is whereby we are saying we must get to Kenya and say we can make Kenya ourselves. Because can I tell you, and this is what I say, and that is where I say I am also not very happy with this government. The monies we are looking for in terms of increasing taxes, we can be able to get it in Kenya without doing so many things. Look at the minerals that we have. We can be able to generate a lot of money from the minerals. Look at the arable rads which we have. In terms of food, the budgets we are talking about food, we can be able to gather enough food for our people without doing so many things that we are doing. And the other thing that we are saying, you just make sure the systems, the department, the government is working well. You cut corruption, not even by a lot of money. You cut corruption even by 50%. Or even by 40% or 60%. Do you know how much money we are talking about? Like go to, like at this one, let it go to the record. Go to the counties and start with this county of Nairobi. This county
is very corrupt.
It is actually, in fact, it is an understatement for you to say it is corrupt. It is actually stinking. You know that stinking? With corruption. Such that you cannot get any single service without corruption. And this is where we are saying, if you look at what is going into corruption, if only you are able to deal with that element, you don't need even these finance bills. This is money that you can be able to get enough money without doing all these things that we are doing. And that's why I can say the young people are doing a noble thing because they are saying to the government, there are some things you will not do. Start thinking because you have money. And that's why they say you can die poor when you are walking on gold. And that is what is happening in Kenya. Kenya, we are walking on gold, but we are poor. It is because we have a poor leadership. Our leader, they really need to think and to start generating whatever we require from our country.
Gaire, as we bring the curtains down on this show, where do you see this going next to?
It's very obvious that,
Just briefly.
Yeah, very quickly. It's very obvious that the bill is going to pass, and the president will, without a doubt, have his way in as far as the finance bill is concerned, which is a revenue-raising mechanism, which then informs the budget proposal, the expenditure estimates that have already been passed by Parliament, that on what it's going to spend the next financial year. The president has an opportunity to prove to Kenyans that then what he means to, what he intends to do with the funds to be able to transform the country really happens, but then he has to live with the political consequences, of how that goes. It's very unfortunate that even myself, the members of Parliament, and myself, my member of Parliament, who is called Honorable Malulu Injendi, who's a member of Parliament for Malava constituency, I saw him voting and supporting this particular bill in a situation where, from a constituency where we are in dire need of good governance, and I consider it as a tragedy. But the president then has a point to prove, so that he can be able not to be slaughtered politically, because it has some very serious
as you're saying that, how do they balance? Because okay, they've removed something. We need to raise funds.
Fred,
that's a given.
Fred, we already had a team that was looking at how to cut cost of running government and avoid wastages in government. I was here when we had the news where this particular CS Njuguna Ndung'u saying that they are going to shut down at least 100 state parastatals which are currently consuming funds that are supposed to go to elsewhere. That is a political decision that can be done very quickly, but the president has refused to do that for political bonga points, because he has the sycophants working those offices. Those 100 state parastatals, Fred, if they are one, because Kenyans went to the ballot, all of us. We voted for the constitution. It's a Kenyan decision. It's not his own decision. They say these institutions, we don't need them anymore. We need these funds to go into the community so that we can build our hospitals and our schools. Isn't it? Those 100 institutions alone, Fred, is way above 500 billion shillings in terms of wages, salaries, cost of rent, and operating them. It's a low-hanging fruit that this president can do, and they do not have to blackmail. You see what they were saying yesterday, the budget committee chair, Ndidi Nyoro, saying that if you don't pass this bill, we are going to cut down the money for the JSS teachers, which is just a couple of billion. That if you don't do this, we're going to change to remove 500 million from, I don't know, the health workers
CDF.
fund. Yet I'm telling you, if this president is just to cut the cost of running this government, he would raise more than double the amount of money that he wants to do. So he's not very sincere. It is true that we need to raise funds, but Fred, we have low-hanging fruit. We don't even need to go to those white people, because if you can cut down expenditure from 100 state institutions that are no longer relevant, we would raise over 600 billion shillings, and we probably in this budget we might not need to borrow the deficit, which I think is 500 or 600 billion, Fred.
Yeah,
they could raise that money by just cutting wastages. The president, you see, one of the issues, and very quickly because of time, you've said that one of the issues that they're talking about cutting cost is that the office of the president is being funded for reconstruction and refurbishment, the office of the deputy president as well, and it's almost an allocation of almost 10 billion shillings. That alone is enough to pay the JSS teachers that they're talking about. But nobody is talking about that. They want to emotionally blackmail Kenyans. It is true we can raise funds, and we can raise funds by cutting wasting in the national government.
Very briefly.
Well, let me say that, Fred, let the government get to a position and it understands the priorities and what it requires to do. Because I can tell you, we are doing things not in the right way because we don't want to put our brains into action. And I am sorry, but I think that is the thing.
Yes.
Because
they don't want to think.
Yeah, they don't want to think. Because I can tell you, the actual amount of money they are looking for is a very small amount of money. And I keep on repeating and saying one thing. If the former president, and it is just 2 years ago, he was actually there and saying that we are losing 2 billion every other day into corruption. If there is one area that I can tell you, it is a serious area that they really need to curb, is actually to curb corruption, even a bit. They would be able to raise this amount of money, and Kenya would be a good place to go. Right now, we are having so many poor people. You find you go to a county, you worked for the county, you spent your money, and the county is actually using the project, the facility that actually you did for them. They have used that facility for 3 years without even paying you. And when you go for paying, you have like 17 people that you have to grease their heads for even something like that to be done. What we are saying is, what is happening? Money is not circulating the way it is supposed to be circulating. Why don't you pay people what they are supposed to pay? They start now building the country, Kenya. But now what you have done, you have put people into a stop. There is no production, there is nothing. How can you build a country like that? And the final thing, and that is one of the things I really pray. You know, there is one thing in this finance bill, and the member of parliament, and even on Tuesday, they really need to check on that. There is something that we call the Data Protection Act. It was brought into constitution for a purpose. Right now, what this bill wants to do, and I hope they are going to remove that thing, they want to remove the Protection Act. So what does that mean? Is that your M-Pesa statement, your M-Pesa transactions are going to be linked with the KRA portal. Such that the people at KRA, if they want to flag anything over 20,000 has been transacting like that, they will actually come and they will give you a very rough time for you to explain how you get the 20,000, and they will tell you that this 20,000 that you get, where did you withhold the tax? You know what they are doing? They are making the Kenyan people to be poorer and poorer, and this is something which is uncalled for. Let them follow the constitution, let them do the right thing, let them stop disturbing the Kenyans, let them put the systems which can work and generate money. They reduce the expenditures and they raise enough revenue, and Kenya would be good to go.
Yeah, true. Well, it looks like this government had started the hornet nest, and the hornets are a very dangerous form of bees. When you start them up and they come at you, they're humongous. They cause a lot of havoc. And that's the kind of havoc that, you know, President William Ruto's government is looking at if it does not handle this particular issue that I've seen Gen Zs out. This is a creature that we have never handled before. You can see they're demonstrating and at the same time giving police tea and bread and sodas, as in even the police themselves don't know how to handle these young men, because these young men are their children. So if you don't handle this right, it might bring a revolution. And that revolution, I am concerned we may, if this is not handled well, we may actually see an Arab Spring kind of revolution come. And if you go back and look at what the Arab Spring did, most of the countries that went through that revolution are not better off today. So handle this well. Don't ignore these kids. They know what they want and they're going to go for it. And unfortunately, right now, some of the statements they're making about this government are very concerning. So do what you need to do and make things right for everybody. Because the people who are going out to the streets, some of them, like my daughter, had no interest whatsoever in politics. But right now, she's turned into a political creature.
Correct.
Dangerous times we are living in. So you do what you need to do, just get it right. And we pray that God is going to give wisdom to our leaders so that they don't become proud and stick to their guns. There's always time to implement some things. You don't need to go this way. Do have yourself a lovely morning. Take care.
Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Thank you.